Hey everybody, my name is Brendan Noble. I'm a young adult author. This week on the Slavic Saturday video, where I talk about Slavic history, mythology, and folklore, I'm talking about the role of birds in Slavic folklore and mythology. And that's because I'm helped my wife, who is a naturalist, with a competition called City Nature Challenge, where we go out and use an app called iNaturalist, where we take pictures of birds, plants, animals, and other things and see what can be identified, what's out in the area, and it helps scientists collect data on nature. And I think it's kind of fun and interesting. It gives you an excuse to get outside, but without having to interact with people and during the pandemic and stuff. So I think it's a fun, relevant topic, and it has a lot to do with Slavic myths. So let's dive in. So many different cultures have a lot of different luck or unluck when it comes to birds. A lot of cultures think crows are unlucky, and a lot of cultures have thought storks theoretically brought babies and things like that. And the Slavic myths and folklore is no different. There's a lot of different luck and versus non-luck when it comes to birds. And like those other cultures I mentioned earlier, the stork is one that is considered pretty lucky. It was considered, especially in the summertime, to bring unborn babies from the underworld as a kind of gift to the world. And so that was also considered a luck. And I'm not sure how much that affected how the mainstream idea today of storks bringing babies, but it definitely was an early example of that. But as well as these birds potentially being messengers or gift bringers of positivity, they could also be negative or can bring a little bit of sadness. That's because during the 40 days after someone died, it was believed that your soul would wander, and that could be either as a bird or another different animal, but most typically it was considered to fly around and invisible as a bird. So seeing one could often represent a dead person, especially if you recently lost someone. That could be a sad experience. And it was also believed that during winter, ravens and crows would represent the people returning from the underworld to bring messages to their loved ones. And during the summertime, storks and nightjars can sometimes also represent that. So as much as these animals and birds could bring good luck, they could also bring sadness and the memories of lost and dead relatives. There's also some references to specific gods or creatures that birds can bring. Especially Perun would have the symbol of the eagle, and sometimes the raven would be one of his major symbols. That's because in the three realms of Pravia, Yavia, and Navia, with Pravia being the realm of the gods, and the symbol of an oak tree, the eagle would sit on the top of that oak tree, and it was kind of a symbol of Perun's power over all three realms. But these symbols could also be for demons, and a lot of demons in Slavic myth were shapeshifters, so you couldn't necessarily trust all the birds. And one of the kind of vicious ones is called a Shala or an Allah, and it is a weather-controlling demon, especially in Serbian and Croatian myths, that would cause a lot of storms and stuff. But it could come as both either a dragon-like creature or even a bird, so you don't necessarily know what type of animal it's going to be. And there's also a lot of famous particular birds or bird-like creatures in Slavic mythology. And the most famous of these, I can't really pronounce the Slavic name or the Polish name, and Zarpatak, I believe is how it's specifically supposed to be pronounced. I probably butchered that, so my apologies. But it's also really well known as the firebird, or in other cultures as a phoenix. But especially in Russian culture, the firebird is in a ton of fairy tales and folklore tales. And that's because it's become a symbol of valor and courage. And along with its symbol being connected to a falcon on fire whose wings and feathers would never go out even if they were plucked, it was considered a very lucky thing, a very powerful thing. In a lot of stories, someone has to pursue it to get one of the feathers as an example of courage. And it's kind of a fun, unique creature, and it usually has a very positive reference when it's brought up in folklore tales. Two other famous bird-like creatures in Slavic mythology are the alcano and the siren. While you may have heard of the siren, it's a little bit different than the one you might have thought of in Greek culture. While both the alcanos and siren sing beautifully, and they are kind of weird and opposite creatures. The siren is and alcanos are both bird-like creatures with the head of a woman and with this singing, but the siren is always maleficent and it comes from the underworld, while the alcanos is considered good, positive, and helpful and comes from Pravia, the realm of the gods. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic, these two. There's often a few other creatures that are brought in here, but these are the two most popular or commonly referenced ones. And it's just kind of interesting that especially the siren is used in a lot of other mythologies as well, but it's very different than the kind of Greek one. Where there's still the singing element, it's a bird instead of, the one that brought Odysseus to his death and things. So it's kind of fun to see the connections, but also and then the last one I'll talk about is the zika, which is a creature from Serbian mythology specifically, and it is a dragon-like creature. It has kind of dragon-like wings, but it has a really long beak and then like a pelican-like sac to hold babies in. That is kind of interesting. It's a weird mix of a bunch of other things, but this is considered actually a lucky creature, as creepy and weird as its pictures may often be. It was considered if you would take one of its eggs and hold it under your arm for 40 days, when it hatched, it would grant you all the wishes that you wish to receive. You would be able to speak to animals, and then you would have a dragon-like thing as your animal that was loyal to you. So that's kind of unique and interesting and kind of weird, but hey, it's Slavic mythology. That happens pretty often. And there are a whole host of other bird-like demons or creatures that I could bring up, but I don't want to make this same one video too long. I'll probably talk about a lot of these creatures more specifically in videos of their own in the future. So, but if you like this video and like a lot of the other things I talk about, make sure you both subscribe to my newsletter down below, where I talk about both the book series that's related to this, as well as show out some of the links for the blog posts related to this. And there's a whole series of these, so make sure you keep watching, subscribe down below. I'll be coming out with them every Saturday.